Do you think society has become too tolerant? You may have seen this video circling around of Obama's and Mitt Romney's debate.
I like the fact that in my state we had Republicans and Democrats come together and work together.
Political debates don't sound like this anymore, and we've learned to put up with it.
You're the sucker, you're the loser.
It seems like headlines keep getting more and more extreme month after month, yet society hasn't reacted the same way they did in the past. If you ever wondered why this might be, political theory might have an explanation through what is called the Overton Window. Meet Joseph P. Overton. Overton developed the idea of what he called a window of political possibility while he was a fellow at the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. At first, he managed the Mackinac Center's financial and construction matters, while earning a law degree on the side, and later worked on policy-centered research and writing. Specifically, he wanted to explain why some policy ideas, even well-supported ones, never gain traction, while others suddenly become possible, and it came down to what policies people were willing to accept. Imagine a line that encompasses all the political ideas in a society, and in the center of this line is an invisible window. Inside the window are ideas politicians, media figures, and regular individuals can openly support without facing major backlash or being ostracized. Outside the window, on either side, are ideas that feel increasingly more extreme or unacceptable. Let's take the example of educational policy from the Mackinac Center themselves. On one end, you'd find a policy idea to use the power of the federal government to provide education to all children. On the other end of the spectrum, you'd find the opposite policy idea: no government involvement whatsoever. Both of these options seem pretty radical, which is why in the center you have the policies that are popular in status quo, i.e. tax-funded public school districts with regulated private schools, and so on. Importantly, this window is not fixed. It moves with the evolution of societal norms and values. This natural evolution, however, is quite a slow process, and many political scientists believe that influential bodies like news agencies, media outlets, and political figureheads have the capacity to shift the window by introducing more extreme ideas into public discourse.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
This works because when people are repeatedly exposed to positions that seem shocking or radical, those ideas can make previously controversial views appear more moderate by comparison. This is known as a shift in the Overton window, and has become quite the buzzword in political spheres. Let's use that same educational example, but imagine there exists a small but outspoken group that advocates for the complete privatization of education, as they think free market competition increases educational quality. This group would likely not be very popular, but now the larger group that advocates for greater privatization with subsidies from the government would seem far more reasonable in comparison. If there wasn't this extremist group, the more moderate group that advocates for greater privatization would be the most extreme on the spectrum, shifting the window in the opposite direction. Historically, there are many examples of the Overton window in action. Take the abolition of slavery. At one point, the idea of ending slavery in the United States was considered radical, but in the 1830s, changes in Europe, where abolitionist movements were gaining ground, began to influence American perceptions. At the same time, figures like John Brown, who took extreme and highly visible actions in support of abolition, brought the issue into public consensus. By pushing the boundaries of what was being discussed, these extremes made the idea of ending slavery feel less foreign and more conceivable, gradually moving the Overton window towards acceptance. Unfortunately, Joseph Overton passed away in 2003 in a plane crash. However, his colleague at the Mackinac Center, Joseph Lehman, continued developing the concept, which grew in popularity, especially in libertarian policy circles, as it could model how sentiment naturally transforms into policy. In the 2010s, the concept became popular in conservative circles. Josh Trevino discussed how this framework could be used by the right. Quote, "Step by step, ideas that were once radical or unthinkable, homeschooling, tuition tax credits, and vouchers, have moved into normal public discourse. The conscious decision to shift the Overton window is yielding its results." In a similar vein, conservative commentator Glenn Beck published a political thriller novel titled The Overton Window, which follows an aging PR guru who plots to use the Overton window to push his own agenda. The book warns that this political framework can be used, especially by a totalitarian left, to create a skewed consensus by putting false extremes on either end of policy discussions. Over time, the idea of the Overton window evolved. It stopped being just a model for understanding policy and started being seen as a tool to actively shape political agendas. And it spread far beyond conservative and libertarian circles. By 2016, it was being used to explain the rise of Donald Trump and Trumpism more broadly. Some commentators pointed to it as a reason why America's political compass appeared to be shifting to the right. Others used it to explain the fragmentation within the Republican Party itself, where political debates were no longer just between Democrats and Republicans, but also between anti-Trump Republicans and Trump-aligned Republicans. So why is the Overton window such a powerful tool for political change? A big part of the answer lies in the interaction of two psychological phenomena. The first is the anchor effect, which is our tendency to base judgments on a reference point we already have in mind. Imagine a man walks into a bakery and orders 10 loaves of bread every day for 2 months. Then on the first day of the third month, he orders just 5. What's your reaction? Objectively, in the grand scheme of things, 5 loaves is still a lot. But you don't think, that's a big order. You think, why did he order less? Your perception has been anchored based on the tendency for them to order 10. The same thing happens in politics. If people are constantly exposed to extreme policies, then less extreme ones start to feel reasonable, even if they would have been once seen as radical on their own. This connects directly to a second phenomenon, our tendency to create false compromises, also known as the argument to moderation. It's the assumption that the best solution must lie somewhere between two opposing views. If you think about this for more than 1 second, you'll probably realize that there's a lot of instances where the middle isn't correct at all. But we hear this kind of thinking all the time. Phrases like meet me in the middle or find common ground are seen as mature and reasonable in everyday life, so naturally people carry that mindset into politics, even when the middle point itself may still be extreme. Now you might be thinking, if we're constantly pulled towards the middle, shouldn't that make people more centrist over time? If anything, shouldn't this reduce extremism rather than increase it? This false compromise obviously can't be true, random YouTuber, you stupid idiot. The data tells us that across the world, the center is shrinking, polarization is on the rise, and more than ever we are falling into extremism. This is true, but I want to reframe the Overton window, not as a proxy for the political spectrum as a whole, but as a proxy for individual parties. Within party lines, confirmation bias and pressure to conform create echo chambers. That makes us less responsive to things like the anchor effect or false compromise, because, frankly, many people aren't engaging with the other side in good faith to begin with, they're trying to oppose it. So interestingly, this counteracts these effects that we talked about. Because of this, the Overton window is most powerful within parties, and since becoming more moderate can feel like switching sides, the ideas that gain traction are often the ones that push further left or right, because that's where there's more room to move the window. That helps explain why we see an increasing fragmentation within political parties, while the center continues to shrink. Now, enough about politics, because I believe that the things that cause the Overton window to shift politically can also be applied beyond politics to society as a whole. So let's get back to the original question. Are we becoming too tolerant as a society? I think many people don't support the current power structures in society, whichever side of the spectrum you are on. Yet, even if the structures deteriorate, it seems like we aren't really doing anything. And now it should make sense to you why. We've seen how bad things can get with the Epstein files, so Nancy Pelosi's alleged insider trading no longer seems to be grounds for massive uproar, as there are bigger problems to deal with. I've also seen this effect be used as a way to rebut criticism. Someone makes fun of your favorite politician or celebrity, well, guess who wasn't on the Epstein files? And then videos like that get hundreds of thousands of likes. They can still suck at their job as a politician or celebrity and not be in the files, but we've gotten to a point where so many figureheads are criminals that the bare minimum has shifted from having logical opinions to not being a pedophile. So what started as a political theory about policy can also be used to understand broader social behavior. It helps explain why political extremism appears to be rising and why we're becoming more tolerant of things that once felt unacceptable. I've linked a few sources in the description if you want to explore this further. This is a very US-focused perspective, and there are plenty of other angles and critiques worth looking at. But if nothing else, you should now, hopefully, have a clearer sense of how the boundaries of what feels normal are constantly being reshaped. Thanks for watching.